welcome Richard Rowntree as my guest this week. Richard is the Managing Director of Mortgages at Paragon Bank, overseeing the entire mortgage business there. With 30 years of experience in the industry, he's held senior leadership roles at Bank of Ireland, RBS, Santander, Cheltenham and Gloucester and Halifax. In 2019, he chaired UK Finance's Mortgage Product Board, and he continues there as a board member. Richard served on the advisory board for the City of London Corporation's Socio-Economic Task Force, and he's currently a board member for Progress Together. In recognition for his contributions to socio-mobility, he received the Freedom of the City Award and was named Mortgage Personality of the Year in 2023 by Mortgage Strategy. Welcome to the business of being brilliant, Richard.
Thank you very much, Helen. Thank you for the invite.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show and to chat with you. And when I was getting ready for our podcasting session, I thought, I wonder what having freedom of the city actually entails. And I did a little bit of research because I'd heard that it involves the right to shepherd your sheep over London Bridge and things. But I gather that's actually not the case. What does it?
That is still absolutely the case. So, and they have a fundraiser every year, once a year, where the liveries get together and the new freemen are able to exercise that right. So I undertook that back end of last year. So it's very fun day. Got to bring the family along, so the children came to enjoy the spectacle as well. So a fabulous day, but very ceremonial. Clearly that's not something we need to be doing nowadays in the centre of London, but it was a really lovely day.
That does sound amazing. So were sheep involved that day?
Yeah. And I wasn't the sole responsible. There was people that knew what they were doing with them. You got to move 6 sheep across the bridge, and I managed to get all 6 there and back with the help of experts on hand as well.
Oh, it sounds great fun. I bet your family loved that, and quite really an experience. Making sure you ended up with 6 on the other side and didn't lose any en route. So. Oh, very well. I stand corrected. Thank you for putting me straight on that. What a fantastic day. And one of the things I didn't mention in your bio is that you are executive sponsor of diversity, equity and inclusion at Paragon Bank, and have been very involved in building a really inclusive culture there. And I think that sounds like something that's really been of interest and something you care about, that's built throughout your whole career. So I wondered if you could kind of tell us how you came to be in the position you're in and to be doing some of the things that you're leading on, because we're going to come on and talk about a really fantastic middle manager program that you're coordinating across the industry. But I'd love to hear the backstory to that first.
Yeah, sure. And we can talk a little bit later about exactly what that means as being the exec sponsor. That was something I was very keen to lean on and passionate around inclusion and belonging for everybody, really, and bringing, or create, as a role as an executive, it's my job to create the conditions where people can reach their potential. And I take that very seriously. And all too often, these type of initiatives are seen as, well, that's an HR function or that's somebody else's responsibility. And I think it's everybody in the businesses to actually ensure that we get the best and create the most opportunity to people to reach their potential. So that part we maybe come back to in a moment. But and a lot of this has come from my own lived experience in terms of things that have gone well for me, not gone so well, but the huge amount of learning I've had over that sort of 30 years. And certainly the opportunities that I've had. And often when you talk about people that progress, they talk about luck. But really, when you get down to it, it tends to be somebody seeing something in you and giving you that opportunity. And so that whether that's a sponsor or a mentor or somebody that's there just maybe to pick you up and dust you down when you make lots of mistakes, as everybody does, certainly when they're starting out in their career, that's hugely important. So I think that's incredibly important, paying it forward. But also, it's not just the right thing to do, it's a smart thing to do. The more we can widen the gate, bring more talent into our organisations, reach deeper into communities to tap into those wider talent pools, I think it just creates better customer outcomes, more diversity of thinking, and better business line of performance, really, for every business.
Yeah, I can imagine. And it's clear that you really see the business case for that, and leaders in other organisations do. In some other organisations, they kind of know it's probably the right thing to do, but it maybe hasn't translated into that real conviction that we need to make that happen, in every way possible in our organisation. So were there particular moments in your career where you kind of had a very positive experience or a very difficult experience that kind of influenced, the direction you took from there?
Plenty of both, really. And starting off my career, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I came straight from college after doing my A-levels. Didn't go on to university. Nobody in my family's ever been to university. But actually, I always had this feeling I wanted to work in the city. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. But this was back at the early 90s. There wasn't really those opportunities. And what I did get a real flavour for early on was the fact you have to get used to rejection. So it was sort of recession in the early 90s. Hundreds of applications for any vacancy, willing to do any sort of entry level role, and every day sort of post bag of rejection or sort of no response whatsoever. And that sort of resilience that builds up, you can lose. You can lose a bit of confidence, really, in terms of, are you ever going to get given an opportunity? But I was given an opportunity, and it was not in London, but I thought I'd maybe do this for a while to get to understand what I wanted to do, and sort of fell into an opportunity with Halifax Building Society, it was at the time. Entry-level role, starting as a cashier in Rayleigh branch back in the 90s. And it was there, really, in terms of when I first arrived, you have these perceptions of what these places are going to be like. I'd sort of always worked since very early on, and built lots of social skills and dealing with adults, etc. But it wasn't until I actually arrived in my first sort of role within Halifax that I thought, there's a real opportunity here to do something pretty special. It's based on meritocracy. Not everybody here is a maths genius and ultimately brilliant, all these things that you build up in your own mind. But it wasn't until somebody saw something in me about 6 months in where they saw that I had potential, and they had a program which was a seed for what we're going to come on to talk to about later on, where you were taken out of your day job and moved around different parts of the bank for 2 years. And if you were successful in completing that program, given your first supervisor position very early on. And for me, that was, I don't think I'd be here today if I wasn't given that opportunity. So one, somebody saw something in me. Secondly, that sponsorship and taking a real interest. And it was, for me, first chance to open up my eyes to learn about myself, what skills I had, what development I had, huge amount of development, and that lifelong learning and interest in continuing to want to improve and be a better version of yourself. That sparked from very, very early on in that program.
Yeah, yes. And it is so rewarding, isn't it, when someone sees something in you that in terms of your potential, ability, and the future path you could take. It when you perhaps haven't noticed that yourself or feel confident in that, and it just starts opening doors and setting your mind in a new direction as to where you could go, right? And I think when we chatted before, you mentioned to me that that really helped you progress for a number of years there, but then you did experience a different kind of barrier when you got more senior in the organisation. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I think that was the platform to start to do well and build that confidence. And as I say, it's certainly an organisation built on meritocracy to a point, I felt at that time. So progressed very, very well, built a good track record, had that air cover from that sponsor, as I say, when you do make mistakes, and able to sort of dust you down and again support you. But also that sort of fast progression was quite linear. So it tended to be, so I think the longest I was in role was that first supervisor job, where I was still living at home, barely knew anything about the corporate world, and was managing a team of people much more experienced and older than me and more worldly wise. And it taught me a lot about the do's and don'ts in terms of managing other people. And it was very much managing at that stage, it wasn't leadership as I know it today. So that was a big wake-up call. But also, I think I was in that role for 3 or 4 years, which is the longest I've been in a job for certainly at that time and for some time afterwards. But then progressed pretty quickly from then onwards. So regular promotions, bigger jobs, and that's sort of one thing I learned is there's broadly 3 stages of your career. Then it just adds more complexity and bigger teams. You go from managing yourself to managing others, and then from managing others to managing managers. I think, and they're the sort of big step ups. And that first time of going from managing yourself to managing others is huge. And I don't think we prepare our leaders and our future leaders, even today, well enough to make that adjustment. There's a big opportunity to do that. But yeah, progressed pretty well. And I was at Halifax for 14 years. I'd say I absolutely loved it. Could have cut me in half and had a blue X running through me. And I think it was, I went for a role, a more strategic role, that had a sort of a functional role in a regional office rather than out in the retail bank and in the branches. And I was unsuccessful for that role. And I got the feedback around having to reinvent myself. And I really struggled with that at the time. And it's probably the most painful feedback I'd had, very honest feedback. And it's probably the best feedback I had as well. It didn't feel like it at the time, but certainly what I did need to do is exactly that, to broaden my skill set and not become so linear and almost a one-trick pony in what I'd done. But that was my first example of hitting this barrier where it seemed that, yeah, I think you're good at that, but I'm not sure we'd really trust you with something a bit more strategic or running a P&L. I knew I wouldn't be able to reinvent myself in an organisation that's known me since I was 17, and took the really difficult decision to leave. But that's when my career and my learning took on a new level and a new sort of experiences in terms of doing something very, very different. And glad I did do that, not settled.
Yeah. And so that that realization that you needed to move if you're going to reinvent yourself and take on a more strategic roles and get those experiences under your belt, that's something, that experience you had yourself, is that something that you've heard since then kind of other managers express frustration with? Because one of the things I know you're very aware of and you're trying to help resolve is the number of people at that middle management level who feel a bit stuck in their career and not able to progress further. So, how have you become aware that it wasn't just you that kind of hit a brick wall at that point in your career, but actually lots of other managers do as well?
Well, I certainly wasn't aware at the time, and that's why it's difficult to deal with. It felt very personal, and that was I was the only person going through this experience. Absolutely not. This. Subsequently, what I have learned, and in terms of where corporate culture has been and where it's moved on, but still a lot more to do. And I think that we still try to fix people rather than the process. And a lot of organizations reward fit and polish over performance. And I think that's a real challenge. And certainly when you've come from non-professional background, more humble beginnings, you don't necessarily have the network or that level of confidence in terms of being able to overcome some of these barriers. And I think part of it is it's very easy to hide your background as well. It's not like with gender, ethnicity, it's obviously very obvious, visible. Your background can be hidden, and people put too much time and energy in hiding their background or trying to sort of create the impression they think they need to do for that fit and polish. And that can come down to regional accents. It can come down to you sort of where you went to school and where you were, or if you went to university, what your parents did. All those things have an impact. And what I have learned subsequently is talking more openly about this and sharing my story. The amount of people that have contacted me to say, I really felt like you was talking about my experience. I don't feel confident yet I could have this conversation, but it really resonated. How did you overcome that? And then that's a big part of what we do at Progress Together is it's not just getting into organizations, it's how you progress for those organizations. And the point you make, and I think there's a number of factors here. One is around confidence levels in terms of people get to a certain point and just settle because they feel like they've reached their natural point of their career progression, or they look at an opportunity for a promotion and think, well, I don't quite tick all of those boxes. I'm not going to put myself forward, or the sort of fire goes out a little bit in terms of just been in an organisation a long time, sort of feel like I sort of reached that pinnacle of what I could do, and not given those stretch projects or opportunities, don't have a sponsor. Or haven't been mentored and developed to take it on to that next level. So there is, and I would describe it as a sort of a permafrost in a lot of organizations where people have either settled or sort of hit those sort of natural limits. And I think part of that is down to not preparing people for the leadership that's required nowadays. It's not about managing and overseeing tasks. It's got incredibly more complex in terms of getting the most out of our organizations and supporting people to reach their potential. That is the job now, in terms of a big part of the job. There's so much more organizations can do to prepare people and tap into that rich talent we have, and not always necessarily have to go for experienced hires externally. Because when you get to senior levels, if you look across financial services, 89% of senior leaders come from a professional background based on their parental occupation at age 14. That tends to be the benchmark and the guide internationally. But also the fact that they don't necessarily have that network and confidence to think, well, if I can't reach my potential here, I'm going to take the plunge and look elsewhere.
Yeah, because it can feel so daunting, when you've already worked for a number of years and reached, a certain level of seniority. It can be really daunting at that point to then move and feel like you've got to start growing your own network again in a new organization and establish your brand and build the trust and credibility in what you can do and achieve. And that kind of is a double whammy, really, then, isn't it? It's almost easier to just stay put and stay in that comfort zone, as you say, but then never really take the leap. So tell us about this middle manager program that you're doing, because I know you care passionately about this issue about helping people to overcome the barriers in organisations that are getting in the way of them progressing to right up to senior levels. But you're not just paying attention to this at Paragon; you're looking at it across the industry. Yeah. So, love to hear about how that's happening and how you're taking that forward. Sorry.
So yeah, and Progress Together have been fantastic. So in terms of Progress Together is that not-for-profit startup, which is really looking about progression of talent in financial services. And we now have membership. 30% of all financial services firms are now members. And that's created a great platform to really make change in this industry. And it's been based on evidence from the Bridge Group that helped us really build an evidence base, because we need that to support the business case. But in terms of specifically around the development program, one of the things I could see quite early on is exactly what we've been talking about. There's a huge amount of untapped talent that's got more potential for growth and opportunity, but it has got stuck for some reason. And it tends to be those for sort of lower socioeconomic groups or non-professional backgrounds that have been hit hardest with that. So one of the things, and pulling back on my sort of early experience from the development program I've been fortunate enough to be part of, was thinking about how could we do this, but bring it forward for today to make it more relevant, and knowing what we've known over the last couple of decades. A huge amount of energy and resources has gone into graduate programs, and that's fantastic. But I think what we have done is we've overlooked the talent we already have in organizations. And, firms have the sort of own sort of future aspiring leaders programs and things like that, but there's nothing cross industry that's really looking to accelerate people to those sort of exco -1 and board positions of the future, making that talent pipeline wider. So that's planted the seed of the idea. And what Progress Together has allowed us to do is to have those conversations with like-minded organizations, because if you start from a point of the challenges of doing such an ambitious program, you'd never get started. In terms of we're looking to rotate individuals around different organizations. Now, if you think about the competition law, antitrust, secondments, keeping in contact with your host firms, all of that, you would never get started. It's back to your point about you need to leap sometimes before you look, just to get going. And the brilliant thing here is we do have a number of organizations that are like-minded to think, I get it, we're all in, let's make this happen. And over the last 18 months, we've created this program to do exactly that. So we were just onboarding delivery partners to deliver some of the best training I've ever seen across financial services, but also this USP in terms of being able to come out of your existing organization and rotate in 2 rotations of 6 months around different organizations to broaden your skills, widen your sort of network and experiences, and don't live in that bubble that often many of us do if we spend a lot of time in one organization. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but we do become a bit institutionalized in our thinking. So we're very excited about this. We're very close to launching the pilot, which we're hoping to have up and running within the next 3 months.
Yeah, sounds amazing, and best wishes for the pilot. Really be following with great interest how that goes. And I started my career on a rotational program back in retail, and actually I never finished it because such a great opportunity came up halfway through in the store that I thought, yeah, I want to go do that. So it's amazing. I know, I absolutely understand you have to put in place kind of certain protocols around, no poaching of each other's talent and all of that. But equally, there will be so many conversations, professional relationships, ideas and connections that spark during that time for people that I'm sure when they get back to their organisation, they will be kind of in a different place to when they left.
Completely agree. And I think your point around poaching, it's really interesting because that came up, and it showed a lot about the mindset in terms of those firms that are part of this pilot. Because speaking to some firms, there was very much, we've been involved in similar sort of programs, but we've lost people. And that to me really was a bit of a wake up call in terms of what a way to look at it, rather than what have we not got right here to enable our people to thrive and continue. It's almost a risk of better not develop them as they leave. And one thing we've created in this is actually the no poaching rule only applies while you're on the program. All bets are off after that. And actually we need to encourage some movement. If you go back to your organization, all this energy, you're going to bring a lot back to your host firm. But equally, if you don't feel that there's potential for you to fulfill your potential there, of course, we need some of that movement. I think that's a good thing, and it's on us as firms to create such a great experience when people are rotating to us that they'd love to come and work with us. I think that's the difference in the mindset we've got between this pilot that's going to run, and also the fact that normally these type of programs, every single detail needs to be laid out. Now that this is going to change, and the pilot approach we've got is we broadly 80% know what the program's going to do, but we need to run the pilot to get that learning. And I think what we're going to do, there's going to be 30 individuals that'll be part of this pilot, and we will be showcasing their development. And I think that's going to create a huge amount of fear of missing out and expectation for people to say, why haven't we got something like that? How do I become part of this program? Because the ambition is then to scale that right the way across financial services and create this exciting energy of people to be able to move and grow and power the talent we need in financial services for the future. Because there's a lot of headwinds on talent, and especially around what we need to do in technology at the moment. We need to modernize, and we need to create the conditions where people can really fulfill their potential in financial services rather than having to go to tech or somewhere else. Why can't they do that in FS?
Yeah, I love the ambition and the way you describe, we want to give people a sense of FOMO, because then, they'll to encourage them to participate in future rollouts of it. And so coming back to kind of the business case for doing it, it's great that through Progress Together, you've been able to connect with other organizations that kind of get the opportunity here for individuals and for the business, but kind of thinking longer term as well about, as you say, the ambition to scale up and roll this out across the industry. Are you planning kind of to measure certain things to help prove the effectiveness of the program, and I guess put together a business case to persuade other organizations why they should care about this and why they should consider participating?
Yeah, exactly that. And you do need there's two things you need. One, you need the data and the evidence. So we do have key success factors which we're going to be measuring across this, but ultimately it's going to be about progression. And we already have, through Progress Together, 150,000 individuals benchmarked anonymously, but actually able to benchmark your own organization in terms of where people are on their career now. And so measuring how this is going to happen, because I think that's going to be key. But also, I think rather than just data and evidence and numbers, that's important. But I think the way I describe it is almost you need to play to the chess club and to the drama club as well. So you need real human stories as well to bring this to life. And I think one of the most powerful things we can do as senior leaders and part of this program is share our stories and share our successes and do that authentically. And the more we can get senior leaders to do that, I think is critical. And certainly my experience of Progress Together has been, once you get buy-in at the top, the problems and the barriers pretty much fall away. There's a lot to do. There's limited resources, and certainly one of the things we found here at Paragon, we're a founding member of Progress Together. CEO and board buy-in at the top level just makes things happen. And right the way through Paragon now, we have an EDI network which brings together all aspects of the great work we're doing here, rather than competing for resources and voice. And it's very much embedded in the business and not seen as an HR function, which I think sometimes it can almost be, well, that's something for HR to worry about and not necessarily for the business. And so we've made huge progress in that.
Yes, that sounds a great place to have reached, that it's really owned and led by the leadership team, and really the accountability for making it a very inclusive culture is kind of really embedded throughout the business. And so we've been talking, I guess, mainly about the barriers that particularly middle managers experience in being able to progress up to senior management roles. And I guess often that might discourage people, not just from trying to go for the next promotion, but actually staying longer term in the industry as well. But to flip to the other side of the coin, then I presume there are also problems about people staying too long, like in the role. There's like a dark side to long tenure in a role. So can you tell me a little bit about what you've observed about that?
Yeah, I think having worked across a lot, like big banks, mid-tiers, specialists, smaller firms, it depends on the culture of that organization. If that's the measure of reward, that almost you need to do your time to get on, then that's problematic. I think that not necessarily tenure is a problem more generally, but I think it's that fact you become institutionalized in your thinking. So you narrow your thinking. You don't have, there's a whole big world going on outside your organization. And if that starts to limit your curiosity, keeping up to date with latest trends. And certainly this is something that's going to, or it's already exploding, but going to accelerate around the use of technology and artificial intelligence, really thinking more broadly. If you're doing that in your firm, great. But my experience has been, unless you have that sort of spending time externally to your firm, you can become a bit inward looking. I think that's where it becomes problematic. And if you create a culture where it's based on tenure that drives promotion, and as long as you do your time, you move on, that's again problematic. Now, that's not what I've seen everywhere. I've seen good, bad, and indifferent, as you can imagine. But certainly rewarding that sort of curiosity and based on performance as well. I think that's key in terms of your rewarding performance, not just length of service. And one of the things I think we need to really address, not just in financial services, I think probably more broadly, is the fact that preparing our leaders for the future and what they need to be doing and thinking about to help everyone reach their potential. It's tended to be, if you're great at something, you got promoted, but how well we've prepared those people. If you've got skills to deliver a task, it doesn't mean necessarily you're going to be a great leader. So I think we can get better at preparing our leaders. Again, part of what we're looking to do in this program is accelerate that sort of curiosity and learning for leadership skills that are needed now and likely in the future.
Yes, and I love that encouragement to really, for companies to really focus on curiosity and learning as a critical mindset and I guess behavior that will help propel you to the top, but also being quite explicit that that's something we want to see in our leaders, because we need that open thinking, that ability to spot opportunities that may be a bit murky and hidden and not obvious yet, and to have some really different thinking. So I love the sound of that. It's been absolutely fantastic hearing about the programme. I'm wishing you all the best with the programme. I'm really keen to hear how that progresses. And is there, if people want to get in touch, if they're interested in following the pilot or getting in touch with you professionally, what's the best way for people to do that?
The best way to do that would be through Progress Together, where we have a whole range of things. The program is just one thing, but in terms of what else we can do to help your organization, wherever you're starting on your journey, if this is new to you or you're well advanced, we've got so much insight and support we can give you in terms of accelerating your learning for this area in terms of driving talent. So that would be my first point. But you'll be hard pressed to miss what's going to be going on with this pilot, because the ambition is to really amplify this across socials. And you know, that's anyone who wants to reach out to me personally, again, they can contact me. I'm sure, Helen, I can provide my contact details, but also via LinkedIn. Happy to pick up with anybody that's curious or prompted any interest about anything we've spoken about today.
Great, thank you. That's really generous of you. And I'll put a link to Progress Together and to your profile on LinkedIn in the show notes, so people can easily get in touch and stay informed on all the progress of the pilot. So it sounds really exciting times for you. Many congratulations on getting to this point, because I'm sure there's a huge amount of effort and work and conversations going into making the pilot happen in the first place. And I think one of the things I'm taking away from our conversation, or out of many things, is that, you know, don't think just about your own organisation, but think about actually the opportunity that lies there to join forces and tackle something on a much bigger scale. And the other thing I think has really resonated for me is throughout, you know, you've kept coming back to the human side of people in their jobs and their experiences of work, and talking about oneself, sharing one's stories, connecting at the human level. I think that's just so incredibly powerful for anybody. So thank you so much for being a brilliant guest. It's been wonderful to talk with you.
Thank you.